Guys, great news. Someone evil died today. I hope we're all happy about it. I am.
He was a big man because he went to college campuses and debated young college students and thought he proved how tough he was with his words that he studied ahead of time. What a piece of garbage. This is what happens. I'm curious if we're going to want to take guns away now from who will inevitably be the white man who shot and killed him. Bye, Charlie.
Charlie Kirk is dead? Ha! You live a hateful life, you get a hateful ending. Point blank, period. I don't feel sorry for you. You're not getting my thoughts and prayers. You're getting my ha-has.
Never give up on your fucking dreams. If you think about it hard enough, if you really put your mind to it, that evil man that you want to die, he will die. That's why you can never end your own life, because then you're going to miss out on days like this. Days like Charlie Kirk bleeding out in front of us. Like, you can't miss things like that. Like, you really can't. And if you keep manifesting.
Only thing I have on the demise of Gumperson McSmallteeth is thank God wasn't no black people out there, because they can't say it was us. And that's what I love. He was in one of the whitest states at one of the whitest schools, and Whitey shot your ass in the neck, bitch. They already got t-shirts, girl.
On the 10th of September, 2025, conservative activist and co-founder of Turning Point USA, Charlie Kirk, was shot and killed on the campus of Utah Valley University in a premeditated political assassination. This video will explore the cultural climate in which the assassination took place. This video is not about the assassination itself. The logistics of the shot, the motivations of the shooter, and the lingering questions surrounding the event will not here be covered.
Swear I'm not happy about I'm not happy about this news. I'm not happy about this news. It's so unfortunate.
Instead, this video aims to ask, how did we get here? How did being Christian, conservative, and/or white come to inspire such severe feelings of hatred among otherwise regular people? And why were so many people so comfortable expressing joy and elation at the death of a prominent public figure?
In thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk. Thoughts and prayers for Charlie Kirk. Thoughts and prayers. Thoughts and prayers.
Before we discuss the cultural factors which contributed to this tragedy, we need to establish some facts. In the same way our food diets have a direct and lasting impact on our bodies, our media diets have a direct and lasting impact on our minds. The books we read, songs we listen to, and of course the movies we watch influence how we behave in the real world, to varying degrees.
They clapped him. No, hey, they clapped his ass. Hey, bro. And the cherry on top, the icing on the cake was the shooter was not black. They clapped him. Get him out of here, coach. Get that nigga out of here. New op pack.
While amount of screen time and impressionability differ from person to person, claiming that the art we consume has no effect on how we live our lives is like claiming that the sun has no effect on our body temperature. It's wishful thinking.
And let me just say this. I'm surprised that y'all didn't get rid of him sooner. And I'm surprised that you guys aren't getting rid of more people. Like, don't stop with him. Don't let him be the end dog. Get rid of them all. And the ones that are above him.
And so, it's important to consider the ideas to which we expose ourselves, and our children, as to ensure that we can discern fact from fiction and think critically about the messages underlying what we see on screens.
Do not, and I will not, ever feel bad when bad people get what the fuck they deserve.
The best part of this whole goddamn thing is that he is not martyr material, so his death will mean nothing. It will activate no one. It will impact few. It's just great.
Because if we are either to give all fiction a free pass, purely because it's make-believe and shouldn't rightly influence anyone with enough common sense, or, equally misguidedly, assume that the values embedded in fiction are aligned with what is true and good and just, then we're giving the authors license to say whatever they want, no matter how ill-intentioned or unhealthy, because even if it isn't necessarily true, nobody would carelessly adopt those ideas, right? nobody could be so easily swayed, right?
I think all this was intentional. If you look at all societies in the world, there are massive sociological programs that are done to the population in order to reach some goal. The Soviets, for example, were trying to create the new man. The new man of the glorious Soviet Republic, of the glorious Soviet people, was supposed to be conditioned into being less of a materialistic type of individual, being more collectively minded. So we can look back and see that conditioning is done to people, and you think that because we're Westerners, capitalist Westerners, that there's been no influence on our mind from people on a sociological scale? What was that one movie where the guy has to fight the girl's 7 exes? That movie is peak millennial experience. If you watch that movie, you can basically understand the beta programming that's going on. And essentially, this was like another preset identity where if you were just like this little quirky little dude, and if you just cozied up and were sweet and sensitive enough, that the girl would clearly fall for you based off of your intellectual and artistic superiority.
If you don't think fiction pushes people to act in ways they otherwise wouldn't, that begs the question, where have you been for the past century? Birth of a Nation led to increased KKK enrollment owed to its heroic portrayal of the Klan. Deer hunting decreased dramatically after the release of Bambi. The film Victim got the ball rolling on legalizing same-sex relations in the UK. Jaws created mass hysteria around the fear of sharks at beaches, despite more people dying to cows each year. After the release of Stanley Kubrick's The Shining, famous for the haunted Room 237, requests to stay in the room's real-life counterpart, the Timberline Lodge's Room 217, skyrocketed. People would book that room months in advance, despite it being the most sinister part of the hotel in the story. After the 1991 film JFK, Congress reopened the investigation into the assassination. Fight Club led everyone from Silicon Valley programmers to high school students to set up secret underground fighting rings. 13 Reasons Why led to a sharp increase in young men taking their own lives in the months following its release on Netflix. Black Panther was championed by Black Lives Matter as a historic achievement and is, to this day, the only superhero movie to be nominated for Best Picture. Which is just laughable. And you can't tell me you've never heard of Doing a Titanic.
In Titanic, the scene that makes you like Jack more than Rose's wealthy fiancé Cal is that, for fun, Cal just sits and has quiet conversations with his friends, whereas Jack has fun with big, loud parties, and the movie portrays this as him living more authentically or living life to its fullest. But really, he's just living like a teenager. He has nothing to offer Rose in terms of reliability or safety, yet this brief, fiery connection is portrayed as more authentic than anything she could have had with a professional fiancé. In Twilight, Edward Cullen is dangerous and obsessive and emotionally tortured, and that is precisely what makes him desirable. Bella's rejection of Jacob, who's warm and grounded, underscores the trope. Right? Safe is boring, danger is hot. Jason Pargin just broke my brain with this insight. I think it's so right. Like, modern romance culture isn't just telling stories. It's shaping selection criteria. Across movies, media, even mainstream dating advice, women are being subtly conditioned to seek out emotional unavailability and volatility as signs of desirability. And the result is a generation of women confusing conflict with compatibility and drama with depth and brokenness with mystery.
And then there's the revisionist history promulgated by modern media, seemingly desperate to convince us that the West was always multicultural and multi-ethnic, in order to normalize demographic change today and convince the undiscerning and uneducated that, despite all the allegations of the West's bigoted past, it was actually always diverse, and you're the odd one out for noticing and calling attention to these trends.
And then we had these rom-coms from Hollywood basically telling us that we have to, in order to be a man, we have to have sex with a lot of women. The preset identities that were being pushed on millennials by the mainstream, one of the main ones would be the frat boy, party boy archetype. Now, it's the guy who will chug beers and do keg stands and partake in that whole scene. His goal is to get drunk. His goal is to get laid. He's not focusing on his body. He's not focusing on his mind. He's not focusing on his spirit. It's just pure hedonism at a very, very young age. Jackass archetype. And then another one would have been the stoner archetype. Now this is being pushed on us like from movies like Dude, Where's My Car? Movies like Road Trip, basically glorifying being a stone bag and, shaming people who did not partake in this culture.
That's to say nothing of the songs, music videos, and books, which have all had their own unique cultural impacts. These examples are scattered across the past century and prove a simple fact. Art influences reality. Depictions of fictional characters engaging in fictional dynamics, winning fictional victories, and suffering fictional losses can have very tangible consequences.
'Cause if you chat shit, you will get banned! Rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, you piece of shit!
But what if the ideas undergirding our fiction are not entirely fictional? What if authors are deliberately crafting stories in order to push public perception in a particular direction? What do you get when you combine a generation of economically unviable youths with widespread racist, sexist, and politically partisan sentiment?
Charlie Kirk got shot and he's dead! Finally, somebody with a gun, which is almost everybody in the fucking States, grew a pair and fucking went and shot somebody on the right side. Thank you, can we keep this up, please?
What do you get when the West cannibalizes itself and radicalizes hundreds of thousands of people to see a certain group as nothing but oppressors and usurpers? You get the unapologetic celebration of political violence.
Kill them! Kill those motherfuckers! And murder those motherfuckers in the street! Let the streets soak in their fucking red capitalist bloods, dude.
We got Charlie in the neck. We got Charlie in the neck. Who's up next? We got Charlie in the neck. Like fucking shit, he's dead? Fucking shit.
You're telling me I wake up from a nap and a cis white man's shot and killed? Oh my god. Maybe the laws will change. Maybe they'll change.
Like you said, people getting shot and killed for the Second Amendment is so worth it. I never thought we'd agree on anything.
This is not a matter of cherry-picking or misconstruing creative liberties, but a simple matter of noticing patterns. In 2014, the world was graced with the release of Kingsman: The Secret Service, a film which, by all means, deserves its place in the annals of action cinema history, but one which, all the same, leaves a foul aftertaste on the palates of anyone paying attention.
South Glade Mission Church is a hate group based in Kentucky. FBI have been monitoring them for years.
For context, Harry Hart, a super-secret agent working for an international spy organization, is investigating a lead on a hate group in Kentucky, a not-so-subtle parody of the Westboro Baptist Church and other such radical Christian sects. Harry is only there because the villain of the movie has an interest in the church, and the Kingsmen want to know why. We are introduced to these Christians by the pastor condemning the US government for condoning things like sodomy, abortion, and divorce, especially right-wing issues which millions of people the world over also have an opinion on. But Western movies would never let you hear a Palestinian's opinion on the LGBT movement. It just doesn't fit their narrative. And so, as soon as we meet these people, we, the progressive and tolerant Westerners, are primed to dislike them. They condemn sodomy and so are homophobic. They condemn abortion and divorce and so are anti-feminist. They are, worst of all, intolerant. Before getting up to leave, Harry is interrupted by a woman seemingly taking offense to the fact that he's not content to stay for the rest of the sermon, to which he replies, "I'm a Catholic whore, currently enjoying Congress out of wedlock with my black Jewish boyfriend who works in a military abortion clinic. So, hail Satan and have a lovely afternoon, madam." If this weren't a suave British gentleman spy, do you really think the line would have had the same impact? It's Colin Firth's delivery and charm, combined with the target audience's preconceived notions about Christianity, that make this such an effective line. But All it amounts to is a Reddit tier playground insult, throwing as many transgressive ideas into a cauldron and machine gunning them at a person who didn't take the time necessary to prepare an equally malicious retort. Because real people don't talk like this. Bitter and cynical people who spend their time collecting factoids to rattle off when the opportunity arises, only taking an interest in debate insofar as it can make them appear intelligent, talk like this. To be clear, I am not taking a stance on either side of the divide. I am not a Christian, nor an atheist, humanist, whatever. I am a critic of the culture and of the stories told therein. To acknowledge the trends playing out before our eyes, to recognize cultural subversion at play, to see the frog boiling in the pot, is not to take a side. I'm merely calling a spade a spade. What follows is the activation of a population control device, forcing everyone present to become violently enraged, resulting in the deaths of everyone except the spy, until he leaves the church. A brutal, sacrilegious massacre moonlighting as a bombastic fight scene. The plot needed that population control device to be tested somewhere on civilian targets. Where better than on a group whose ideological beliefs render their lives worth less? In the second season of Netflix's The Punisher, our heroes face off against a Christian crime syndicate run by a wealthy yet unassuming couple whose evil is never in question.
Thank you, both of you.
It's what we do. We look after one another.
Amen.
The villain of the season, John Pilgrim, of course, is a menacing and unnervingly cold antagonist. He's really just the enforcer of the actual villain's schemes, but the season's focus on his faith and character arc takes up far more screen time. You see, Pilgrim is so devoutly Christian that he's got a Bible verse memorized for every occasion, flinches at the use of any profanity, and, naturally, has a radical right-wing past. The story frames his faith and his evil as directly intertwined, so much so that, over the course of the season, as he begins to question his motivations and place in the criminal organization, he also crosses his long-held religious boundaries. This is owed partly to the return of his unsavory former associates from his dark past, but mostly to his sickly wife succumbing to her ailment while he's away on business, and his 2 sons being held hostage in return for his killing the heroes of the story. His faith and its corresponding villainy are put center stage, and his masters repeatedly utilize biblical verses and parables in order to keep him on track and in line with their agenda.
What was righteous about all this anyway?
Later episodes see him relapse into all manner of depravity, breaching his sobriety and his fidelity to his wife, in direct defiance of the convictions that were integral to his character, culminating in the betrayal of his more devout superiors and letting our heroes off the hook because they helped return his sons to him. At every turn, Pilgrim's Christianity is inextricably tied to his evil, and so, as his character reforms, as he becomes aware of how religion was being used to manipulate him, he moves further away from his faith. His character arc unambiguously communicates to the audience that Christianity is a corrupting force, and that disregarding it was a net benefit to him. The video game Far Cry 5 pits the player against a fictional doomsday cult with overt Christian influences, reinforcing the notion in the mind of the uncritical thinker that Christianity is not a wholesome, constructive, or charitable belief system, but a tyrannical, hateful, and sinister doctrine that pushes its proponents to convert non-believers under duress and eagerly anticipate the end of the world. This cult, the aptly named Eden's Gate, although racially diverse, feeds into the polarized paradigm of left versus right politics by portraying the cult members as gun-toting, Bible-bashing patriots. Never forget that developers Ubisoft commissioned music to be made in order to be played diegetically within the cult's compounds, and the most popular of the soundtrack, Keep Your Rifle by Your Side, lives on as a reclaimed song of celebration among Christians, conservatives, and secularists with good taste alike. When you listen to its lyrics, there is nothing truly outrageous or insidious about it. But, in the eyes of the developers, the desire to defend oneself and one's family with firearms, the foresight to plan and prepare for nationwide emergencies, and the general contempt for centralized banking and wealthy tech oligarchs are all indicative of fringe, conspiratorial, and toxic right-wing thinking. In 2013, we were blessed with Naughty Dog's survival horror tour de force, The Last of Us. a video game set 20 years post-zombie apocalypse where various factions of survivors struggle to make ends meet under the threat of draconian martial law, bandits and looters, and, of course, the undead. Later in the story, while traveling across the country in a desperate attempt to find a cure for the zombie infection, the main characters encounter a faction of survivors whose intentions are constantly uncertain and under scrutiny, until it is revealed that they have been resorting to cannibalism in order to feed their people and hold a grudge against the protagonists for having previously killed members of their group in self-defense. David, the leader of the cannibals, is a twisted and perverted individual, a villain well characterized by his disregard for the sanctity of the human body and his predatory interest in Ellie, the teenage co-lead of the game. He is a cannibal and a sexual deviant. That is it. His evil stems from very clear, well-written traits that any discerning individual can point out as evil. Why then, when HBO adapted the game into a TV show, did the writers opt to make David a Christian? The religious dimension to his character was not present in the game and was added into the show for, ostensibly, no reason. Writing David to be a Christian does not meaningfully impact the overall direction or themes of the show. What it does do is amplify David's evil, as he is now not only a sex-fiend cannibal, but also a moral hypocrite, someone who uses the virtue and perceived moral high ground afforded by Christianity to disguise his deep-seated corruption. And, you can see where I'm going with this, it reinforces the anti-Christian prejudice already present in the minds of the show's target demographic: leftists. Neil Druckmann, writer and creative director of the games, has openly admitted to sowing his own ideological biases into the games and show, and this presents itself in the form of character race swaps, emasculation of the male lead, an entire episode dedicated to a gay couple who were only mentioned in passing in the game, and by turning David, the horrible perverted cannibal, into David, the horrible perverted Christian cannibal.
And the first project we started kind of moving forward on was called Mankind. And the idea is very similar to what you've seen in The Last of Us, that the cordyceps has jumped from insects to people. But ultimately it failed. And the reason it failed is because it was a misogynistic idea. So while working on The Last of Us, I had this secret agenda that's becoming less and less secret the more I talk about this stuff.
Amazon Prime's The Boys is easily one of the most egregious offenders when it comes to influencing public discourse for the worse, because since it grabbed everyone's attention in Season 1, the creators have steered it away from edgy superhero satire and into safe, predictable, politically correct, sexually explicit shock art. Saying that it's safe at the same time as shock art is not at all a contradiction, mind you. WAP, The Wolf of Wall Street, and Book Talk are all the evidence we need that disturbing and degenerate content is totally mainstream today. So long as they have the right politics, of course. The Boys covers hot-button social issues such as Black Lives Matter, internet trolls, immigration, school shootings, Antifa, cancel culture, and Pizzagate with about as much nuance as Trump has when congratulating himself. While the show does, occasionally, satirize non-right-wing pop culture, such as Kendall Jenner's hilariously tone-deaf Pepsi ad, or Gal Gadot's hilariously tone-deaf group rendition of Imagine, which graced our screens during 2020's mass lockdown, these gags are of a different kind. The right-wing caricatures all point viewers to perceive those ideas, again, held by millions of people even outside the West, as unhealthy and regressive. While the caricatures and parodies of other social issues are treated with cynicism, they don't carry the gravity or impact that the right-wing mockeries do. Oh, would you look at that? Portraying Black Lives Matter as justifiably outraged victims of a prejudiced system, and portraying Homelander supporters as red-hatted bigots, leave the audience with dramatically different perceptions than a cheesy Church of Scientology parody, or satirizing the oversaturation of superhero content nowadays. When Sister Sage calls the attendees of TruthCon ringworm-infested cousin fuckers, that's a sardonic, culturally aware jab that lands with cutting accuracy. But when Homelander tells his followers that their opponents intend to replace them with godless, non-binary socialists, that is an incendiary grifting lie.
Quote-unquote vaccines that they're giving out at the Starlight House actually cause autism. And not that cool Rain Man autism makes you good at counting cards and shit.
Homelander, The conniving and controlling villain of the story is consistently the one to decry the mainstream media's dishonesty, while most of the time they are, in fact, just holding him accountable for the damage he causes.
I am sick and tired of the lies, peddled by the mainstream media. But the real question here, Cam, who's behind these attacks?
Dubious right-wing hero Gunpowder laments George Soros' influence over American politics and openly opposes socialism.
In every classroom around the country, they're going to teach your kids to hate America, the Constitution, and the Second Amendment. Good for us.
Bluehawk, a distinctly police-themed hero, is admonished for his treatment of black civilians.
I spotted a blackmail following the victim southbound on Marin Boulevard. I intercepted him, at which point the suspect became aggressive.
He is characterized by a glib disregard for the black critics of his violent methods and racial profiling. He is depicted as a cowardly and deeply bigoted abuser hiding behind the shield of crime statistics.
Would you have done the same thing to a white guy in Mill Hill?
I go where the crime is, and the crime just happens to be in black neighborhoods.
Firecracker, a country-themed stooge for the villain's agenda, alleges that the protagonists work with Tom Hanks and Oprah in order to orchestrate a satanic child trafficking service.
An order of a hot dog gets you a boy, a taco, a girl, a combo gets you a child they forced to have trans surgery, and a soda gets you a shot of adrenochrome.
Firecracker is one of several influential characters who hide their malfeasance behind Christianity, preaching about having been saved, having accepted Jesus' grace, all the while indulging in whatever depraved antics the writers cook up next and assisting Homelander in his schemes and cover-ups.
This is a biblical war of good versus evil, folks.
Every time an overtly right-wing character espouses a political position, it is either treated with irreverence and dismissed as fringe, or meant to inspire shock and disgust in the show's target audience for how immoral and unreasonable it is. Meanwhile, leftist ideas of tolerance, inclusion, equality, and global coexistence are treated as normal and never questioned by the protagonists or satirized by the writers. Probably worst of all is what they've done to Homelander since his praiseworthy debut in Season 1. He had depth and mystery. He had presence on screen. And, most importantly, he was a fantasy. A super wolf in sheep's clothing, evil Superman, a morally bankrupt and mentally ill villain who millions of people believed to be the greatest hero of all. The writers took that character and simply projected their impressions of Donald Trump onto him, increasing his involvement in political campaigns, dialing up his disdain for the mainstream media, and making sure you know his supporters are red-blooded, Second Amendment-loving, free speech-defending, patriotic morons. After Homelander murdered a rowdy civilian in broad daylight, in front of his supporters, they cheered him on and only became more infatuated with him. This only makes sense when you remember that the writers care less about telling a coherent, engaging story than they do about selling a false perception of reality to their viewers. A character who had the potential to be a Game of Thrones tier villain, surviving multiple seasons and re-earning our investment with every maneuver made, became a shallow right-wing caricature and sexually disturbed diva whose reputation is owed entirely to the actor's performance, rather than the writing. This satire is entirely two-dimensional and was clearly created in bad faith, and the writers know that to be true because the Season 4 finale, titled Assassination Run, aired the same week as the attempted assassination of Donald Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. There were 5 days between that event and the release of the new episode, in which time the boys' showrunners decided to include, even if only temporarily, a disclaimer disavowing violence of any kind. But why would they feel the need to do that? Sure, the episode's name was Assassination Run, and the show had, for years, been drawing inspiration from real-life conservative culture, but The Boys is supposed to be satire, fiction. Why would the creators feel any pressure to condemn political violence after the attempted assassination of an incumbent president? Maybe it's because the plot of the episode is that Homelander and his supporters have been claiming that the current president stole the previous election and planned to assassinate him in a coordinated coup, and the showrunners understood how poorly that concept would be received by millions of people after Donald Trump nearly got assassinated just days earlier. Maybe the folks behind The Boys realized that having such an influential artistic platform isn't all fun and games. Maybe they got cold feet because they had carelessly written real-life political dynamics into their fictional world, demonized roughly half of the US population besides who knows how many other right-wing oriented people around the globe, caricatured their main villain in the likeness of Donald Trump, and, all the while, cowered behind the veil of satire. The ironic part is, they got it backwards. In The Boys, it's the conservative Christian rednecks who cultishly follow their grifting egomaniac into a coup attempt and would have no problem using violence against their political opponents. In real life, it was Donald Trump, the inspiration for Homelander's despotic disposition, who nearly got shot in the head, live on camera, by an internet radicalized youth whose motives, officially speaking, remain unknown. Where is the self-awareness? Where is the accountability from an establishment which promulgates anti-Western sentiment through news, academia, and fiction alike? Where is the acknowledgement that the political violence we're shown and told about on screens has an overwhelming, disingenuous, and dangerous bias? Season 27, Episode 2 of South Park has retroactively become a landmark moment in our cultural canon as it mocked and caricatured Charlie Kirk by name just over a month before his death.
Hello and welcome to the 3rd annual Charlie Kirk Award for Young Master Debaters.
Funnily enough, since Charlie had a sense of humor, he wore that caricature as a badge of honor, in confident defiance of the very real, very violent implications such jokes have on the public consciousness. Ultimately, it's not the comedian's fault for mocking or parodying real-world public figures. That's their job. But it says a lot about their creative integrity that Matt Stone and Trey Parker felt it necessary to delay episode 5 of that same season after the assassination.
The new South Park episode's gonna be too good!
Once again, if their intentions were pure and they were simply creating art, satire, then why feel the pressure to adjust their schedule after the murder of a noteworthy individual they mocked? South Park is famous for its overblown introductory disclaimer and for allegedly being an equal opportunity offender. Why change their tune just because a recent target of their ridicule was assassinated? It is all too likely that, as they've done before, they meant to rewrite and re-edit aspects of the upcoming episode in order to better suit the cultural climate of which they so love to make light. They did not predict that Donald Trump would win the 2016 election, and so re-edited that episode at the last minute. No one could have predicted the assassination of a political personality South Park just so happened to caricature days prior, and so they probably delayed this new episode in order to reflect the new, stark reality. The creators of South Park claim that their fiction is just that, unreal, but then change their airing schedule after realizing their satire would not be welcomed as such. South Park is renowned for not holding back, for pushing the limits of how offensive a cartoon can be, and for not worrying about who they offend, no matter the culture, creed, or ethnicity. And yet, upon even a cursory glance at the latest seasons, we know that's not true.
Ever since the Nazis won World War II...
Whoa!
What? The Nazis won World War II here? Yes. That's the craziest thing I've heard since I found out Cheerios is an H on the end. Well, what happened where you're from? Yeah, the Americans won. I don't know who they teamed up with, but I'm like 99% sure it wasn't the Nazis. You must live in like a utopia.
Here, we are again covering media that released around the time of the assassination, with one of these episodes airing the very day after Kirk succumbed to his wounds. Season 2 of Peacemaker sees the main character, Chris, stumble into an alternate dimension where life could not look more promising for him, in his current circumstances.
Best dimension ever.
In this mirror world, his long-deceased brother is alive and grew up alongside him. His supervillain father is alive and a downright altruistic human being. His love interest actually reciprocates his feelings, and in general, the atmosphere is pleasant, accommodating, and optimistic. This too-good-to-be-true scenario is proven to be just that when his friends from his own reality, one of whom being black, travel to this alternate reality in order to urge Chris to return home with them.
You don't notice anything weird here?
No, like what?
I haven't seen a single person of color ever since I've been here.
No way.
Tensions mount as Harcourt points out how every desk around them has a copy of Mein Kampf on it, and the American flag has had its stars replaced with a swastika, and Adebayo's leisurely stroll through the suburbs is interrupted by everyone around her calling her out for her skin color and forming an impromptu lynch mob in order to chase her down Looney Tunes style.
This is your perfect world, huh?
You see, this world has achieved a level of peace and prosperity entirely alien to Chris and his cohorts because it practices a strict form of racial segregation that forces all non-whites into work camps. Did I just read that right? No? Yeah, that is what happens in the show.
I mean, anything anyone has here is at the expense of those who are considered outsiders, forced to toil away in camps their entire lives. Well, that's whack.
This plot twist landed with all the subtlety of a sriracha enema and was about as surprising as seeing more and more Hollywood personalities popping up on the Epstein client list.
Can't believe you didn't realize we're in Nazi world.
Come on, how was I supposed to notice that?
The giant fucking mural of Hitler?
Oh, fuck, how'd I miss that?
You can see this rug pull coming a mile away because you'd have to have been living under a rock to not notice the distinct lack of diverse casting in this alternate dimension. This world is, for a 2025 TV show, bizarrely lacking in racial representation. Combine that with the overall quality of life this society has achieved, and you get a theme so incomprehensible and a message so muddled, writer-director James Gunn had to make sure his characters spelled it out for you.
Sad part is, I'm not so sure this Nazi world is as different from our own world as we wish it was.
Damn straight.
The satire here is not in service of comedy or even the overarching story. This gag, that Chris is so buffoonishly oblivious that he didn't even notice he had moved to Nazi world, has no impact on his character development or the drama that arises from the conflict between his world's friends and this world's family. The underlying theme of this whole infantilizing plot thread is that Nazis believe that a flourishing, healthy, clean, and cooperative society can only be achieved through segregation and oppression. The takeaway is that anyone who laments their own community's imperfections, or who calls attention to ongoing ethnic demographic change, is conflating the two. The message is that you are a vile person for suggesting that multiculturalism is not all it's cracked up to be, and that the only logical explanation for ethnic Europeans to want to live among their own is that they are Nazis. The propaganda is so important to the people behind the scenes that they made it explicit just in case you had any notions of interpreting it the wrong way.
Sad part is, I'm not so sure this Nazi world is as different from our own world as we wish it was.
Damn straight.
For years now, corporate news media and celebrity influencers have been peddling the ideology that the West is an inherently intolerant and historically cruel force, despite it being so accommodating to foreigners that they're literally dying to get in. Inflammatory labels such as fascist, white supremacist, bigot, and Christian nationalist have been lumped together with right-wing, conservative, and Christian, with no regard for the ramifications that kind of obfuscation has on real people just going about their lives while holding not at all radical beliefs.
Is Charlie Kirk a life lost, or did the devil just call home one of his disciples? I mean, they celebrated when they killed Martin Luther King and he was preaching peace. I think it's okay for people to be rejoicing in a white supremacist dying. I think that's all right. Mind you, he died doing what he loved, protecting gun rights.
In an era when you can accurately guess the morality of any given character in a Disney Plus show based on their race, and when the terms diversity and inclusion have been twisted to exclude Christians and conservatives in particular, it's no wonder that people in the real world have passively absorbed the notion that the right is a cesspool of colonizers, conspiracy theorists, and cretins.
The guy who made a living spewing evil, hate-filled rhetoric died from getting shot right in the voice box. I might be 1% less atheist today.
Such is the role that Christianity now plays in Western media, a relic of a bygone era, an antiquated doctrine better left in the past, a regressive and unkind system of thought that privileges some people above others, typically along racial lines if you believe what the subversives and revolutionaries are saying.
So, apparently at Utah Valley University, Charlie Kirk just got shot in the neck. Bitch, I don't even know what to fucking say to that one. Except, you got me fucking gagging. Let this be a lesson to all those other conservative freaks, those little weirdos with podcasts. Just know, your necks are on the line. Your necks? No. Your necks.
Christianity is no longer seen as a pillar of Western society, or even as a tradition worthy of respect and remembrance. It is now symbolic code for irredeemable villains and schools of thought that have caused too much suffering to be allowed to be honored in our storytelling. Which is why a cartoon drawing of the Prophet Muhammad leading to a real-life massacre is the unfortunate side effect of cosmopolitan coexistence, largely swept under the rug in the eyes of the Western public. But a blockbuster movie scene depicting a government agent slaughtering dozens of innocent churchgoers as the product of a population control experiment is a cool action set piece.
But now, we're known as like these annoying political extremists. So what happened between high school and adulthood that led to that? Well, something called college happened. And as someone who went to college, I'm going to tell you that it was so blatantly politicized with a certain agenda that there's no question that a lot of millennials were indoctrinated in college into their current political beliefs.
It is astonishing just how many people celebrating Kirk's death are visibly college-educated, or rather, college-indoctrinated. It is troubling to see how quickly Charlie's final moments were immortalized in downright tasteless memes, and it is disgusting to see just how many people unabashedly cheered for his death, the suffering of his family, and the further targeting of people like him.
Well, I just saw the video of Charlie Kirk getting his box boomed. I mean, boomed, bitch, like, gone. I have no issue with it. The clown always comes back to bite. But why do y'all keep aiming for the wrong niggas? Aim higher. Aim higher.
I firmly believe in the value of making light of tragedies. I have a dark sense of humor and am totally okay with making jokes about sensitive subject matter. But where's the joke here? These people aren't making fun of a dead man for comedy's sake, they're mocking the victim of a political assassination because they see it as a victory for their side.
We have tried. We've done peaceful protesting, we've wrote into the government, but no, these red-sided people don't care. So what do you think we're gonna do? The red-colored people are like, he was such a good person, why did he get shot? If you've seen the video on Twitter, please listen to the last 10 seconds of what he said before he went.
Prejudice jokes can be funny when written well and applied indiscriminately, but when all the mockery goes in one direction, it just ends up being sad and disquieting, as though you're not engaging with a comedy routine as much as you are enduring a pathetic, begrudging attempt at self-therapy.
Charlie Kirk was a fucking Nazi. He was a fucking Nazi. And you know what kind of Nazi is the best Nazi? A dead one. Thank God that shit stain of a person is no longer in this world, and may his hell be being confronted by every single marginalized person that he hurt.
Of course, I don't mean to suggest that movies were the primary contributing factor to Kirk's untimely death. The political and socio-economic factors have been widely discussed and are complicated enough to warrant endless more discussion. But from where I'm standing, the sad state of the film industry is undeniable, and its effect on the broader culture is clear as day.
He said that gun deaths are worth it to keep the Second Amendment. Alright, bet, bitch.
It might take years for us to know exactly who orchestrated the assassination and exactly how those intentions were fomented in the killer, but what we can know right now, with a high degree of certainty, is that the biased and abusive attitudes towards white, conservative, Christian men in media has given multitudes of people the impression that political violence is justified because they see their opponents as morally irredeemable, utterly evil, and beyond reason.
Number one, I think it's kind of poetic justice that the man who was spreading nothing but hatred and dishonest rhetoric got pew-pewed in the throat, so that in his final moments he couldn't in fact speak. I think that's just poetic justice.
The true irony of this tragedy is not that Charlie was shot while broaching the topic of gun violence, but that the left celebrated his death because they believed no amount of discourse or argumentation could get through to him while he was engaged in the act of debate, as he had done countless times over the past decade. Charlie died from the very thing he warned about in a prior encounter.
I go around universities and have challenging conversations, and because that's
what is so important to our country is to find our disagreements respectfully, because when people stop talking, that's when violence happens.
I've never seen someone do this.
Well, it's a growing trend because people like me are facing violence, assault, the left. Yes, the campus Antifa. I've been stormed out of restaurants. I've been assaulted publicly, multiple death threats.
Okay, so what's your goal in all this?
There's more people that agree with me than some people would actually believe, and they come out of the woodwork when I do stuff like this. We record all of it so that we put on the internet so people can see these ideas collide. When people stop talking, that's when you get violence. That's when civil war happens, because you start to think the other side is so evil and they lose their humanity.
And yet, where is the Civil War? Where is the widespread rioting and looting? Where is the rationalizing from US politicians that violence is the voice of the unheard? Where is the right-wing retaliation?
Yeah, 2 kids. Fuck his kids. They give a fuck about that white boy kid. They probably autistic anyway. Give a fuck about that white boy kid. Fuck them kids. Fuck that white boy.
In the days and weeks following the death of George Floyd, leftists did their best to deify him, not only as a saint and a martyr, but also as the catalyst for widespread political protest, which took the form of rioting, looting, advocating for further political violence, and the establishment of various occupied zones across the United States.
Does anybody here know what happened to the people who did not get on board with the French Revolution? Say it louder. Say it louder. That is the message we need to send. We are serious. This is not a joke. I am tired of seeing my people be genocided by every definition of the word.
Crime-infested, racially segregated communes to which police were refused access and politicians and celebrities rushed to defend as expressions of peaceful objection until the fires reached their neighborhoods.
How long do you think Seattle in those few blocks looks like this?
I don't know. We could have the summer of love.
The very essence of repressive tolerance. When the left does something wrong, it's not happening, but also it's a good thing that it's happening. When the right does something wrong, it's a threat to democracy and an eerie reminder of World War II era atrocities.
Wah, wah. He probably made like thousands of trans kids kill themselves. I literally could not give a fuck. They can get a stepfather.
Oh no, someone shot Charlie Kirk. Look, I don't know who needs to hear this today, but that's how you pick up a woman.
And the last thing on this today, yes, I am a better person than you for celebrating the death of a Nazi. And actually, it's pretty weird that you're not, and simultaneously asking people to have empathy for the Nazi. Y'all good?
There is no parity between the left and right in terms of violent intent. In the weeks prior to Charlie Kirk's assassination, a Ukrainian woman in the US, a literal refugee from the ongoing war, was stabbed on a train by a 14-time repeat offender who explicitly mentioned her race on the security camera recording. For what reason? Could it be that the anti-white, anti-Christian, anti-conservative sentiment smeared across society actually has consequences? We are being fed media diet poison, and most of us don't even know it. Some are too stubborn or complacent to admit it. What we consume through storytelling subliminally influences us, affirms our biases, reinforces our prejudices, shapes our reality. And what has the left been consuming for the past decade at least? Violence, resent, hatred, malice, racism, propaganda. If recent trends on social media are any indication of where we're headed, the cultural pendulum is swinging back in an unexpected and alarming way. There's no telling just how radical the current generation of disgruntled and disenchanted youths will become with the leftist worldview that has let them down so grievously. But if any good can come from the cinders of the culture war, please let it be an improvement in the quality of our storytelling. We cannot afford to continue down this path of shamelessly shoehorned activism and political pandering in our movies. It's just lame, and average people the world over are sick of it.